Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a really massive stack of sources today.
Yeah, it's quite the pile.
It really is. We've got everything from these exhaustive lists of essential English phrases and business vocabulary to guides on neural learning, natural teaching methods, spaced repetition, and even subconscious programming.
It sounds like a lot, but it all connects, I promise.
Right, and that brings us to our core mission for this deep dive. We are figuring out how to master the English language specifically for professional and formal environments.
Which is a whole different ballgame.
Exactly. So we're going to concentrate on the exact phrases you need for business, how to navigate corporate hierarchies through language, and the critical differences between common words and formal structures.
And maybe most importantly, how to actually rewire your brain to remember these phrases perfectly when the pressure is on.
Okay, let's unpack this because so many people hit a massive wall when learning English. They use their brain like a hard drive.
Right, just trying to download a vocabulary list.
Yeah, exactly. And today, we are going to show you how to use it as a dynamic network instead, so you can actually master boardroom English.
Because before we can even talk about how to memorize vocabulary, we really need to know exactly what vocabulary matters in a business setting.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between casual chatter and formal structure. It's literally the difference between sounding like a tourist and sounding like an executive.
Totally. The sources highlight this contrast perfectly. Take informal greetings, for example.
Like saying, "What's going on?" or "Long time no see."
Right, or just a casual, what's up?
Yeah.
Those are great for friends, but if you need to show respect to superiors or new clients, you have to use formal greetings.
Like, "How do you do?" or "Pleased to meet you."
Exactly. And introductions have incredibly strict rules, too. When you're meeting a boss or someone high up the corporate hierarchy, you shouldn't just walk up and say, "My name is."
Oh, really? That feels so natural, though.
It does, but the sources point out that you need a formal structure. You should use something like, "I would like to introduce myself," or "Allow me to introduce myself."
Huh. And I noticed the sources also talk about asking people what they do for a living.
Yeah, that's a big one.
A casual, "What do you do?" or "How do you make a living?" works fine at a dinner party. But for networking, "What kind of work do you do?" is way more appropriate.
And how you respond requires structure, too. You want to state, "I work as an English teacher," or "I work in advertising."
Right. It maintains this sort of professional distance rather than oversharing your whole life story.
It really does.
I was thinking about this, and it's like using casual English in a formal business setting is like wearing flip-flops to a gala.
Oh, that's a great visual.
Right. Like, it technically covers your feet, but it sends a terrible message. But I have to ask, is this really just about memorizing vocabulary, or is it a broader structural mindset shift?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, formal structures are actually tools of hierarchy.
Tools of hierarchy. Okay, explain that.
Well, they signal emotional intelligence, you know? They show respect and a deep level of professionalism. You're showing you understand the room.
That makes total sense. So once you've successfully introduced yourself and established that respect, how do you navigate the actual business discussions?
That's where things get tricky.
Yeah, like how do you handle specific terminology and the inevitable disagreements without breaking that formal structure?
Well, let's dive into some specific business terminology from the sources. We need to break down the crucial differences between some commonly confused words.
Like entrepreneur and entrepreneurship.
Exactly. An entrepreneur is the person, but entrepreneurship is the lifestyle or the philosophy. It's not the project itself.
Right. And if you're talking about a new business project, especially a large-scale one, the sources call that a venture.
Yes, a venture. It implies a larger scale than just a basic undertaking. And we can't forget everyday business words like budget, which have very specific corporate weights to them.
I also saw these formal transactional phrases in the sources. Like if you're at a bank, you wouldn't just say, "Give me money."
I mean, you could, but it wouldn't go well.
Right. You'd say, "I would like to apply for a loan," or "I need to make a bank draft."
It's all about that structural politeness. And this is especially true for boardroom diplomacy and expressing opinions.
Oh yeah, you can't just blurt out, "No way," or "Beats me" in a meeting.
Definitely not. Formal environments require structured framing. You need to say things like, "To be honest, I think," or "From my point of view."
Or just simply, "In my opinion."
Exactly. And when you have to polite disagree while still respecting the hierarchy, you never just say a flat-out no.
You use phrases like, "I'm afraid I disagree," or "I'm sorry to say I disagree."
Yes, those are perfect examples.
Okay, but let me push back on that for a second. Does using softening phrases like, I'm afraid I disagree, make you sound, I don't know, weak?
Weak. How so?
Well, if you're in a tough business negotiation, doesn't saying I'm afraid make you sound unconfident?
Ugh. This raises an important question. In English business culture, diplomatic language doesn't show weakness at all. It actually shows control.
Wait, really? Control?
Yes, it allows you to firmly hold your ground without launching a direct personal attack.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it preserves the hierarchy and the working relationship. You're disagreeing with the idea, not attacking the person.
So you're basically wrapping the rejection in a formal buffer. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
But now that you know exactly which formal phrases and diplomatic structures to use, how do you actually remember them?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because freezing in a boardroom because you're mentally translating from your native language is an absolute nightmare.
It's the worst feeling in the world.
To fix this, we have to completely change how we learn. The sources emphatically state that traditional rote memorization is a massive failure.
Translating word for word just does not work for fluency.
Right. The brain is not a sponge or a simple hard drive. So the sources introduce this active context three-step method to retain complex vocabulary.
And this method is a game changer. Step 1 is to capture the full scene.
Which means you never isolate a word. Right.
Exactly. If you learn the word exhausted, you don't just write down exhausted, you write the whole sentence. Like, after the long meeting, I felt completely exhausted.
Got it. And then step 2 is to make it yours.
Yes, create a 100% personal, real sentence.
So using the word overwhelmed, I might say, on Mondays, I always feel overwhelmed by the number of emails I have.
Perfect. Because it's true to your life, your brain cares about it. And that leads to step 3, which is visualize and feel.
Visualize and feel. Okay, how does that work?
You close your eyes for 5 seconds, visualize that mountain of Monday emails, and actually feel that specific stress. Emotion physically anchors the memory.
Wow. And the sources connect this to natural teaching methods, right? Like the direct method and total physical response, or TPR,
Exactly. The goal is to absorb language spontaneously, just like a child does.
by associating words with actions and emotions.
Yes, because that reduces what linguists call the affective filter, which is basically just your anxiety level.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. I like to think of the brain as a spider web.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, think about it. A new business phrase is like a fly. If it only has one point of contact, like a direct translation on a piece of paper, it just falls right through the web.
It doesn't stick at all.
Exactly. But if it has multiple threads like context, visual imagery, and personal emotion, it gets caught permanently.
That is a brilliant way to visualize it. So once you've caught that phrase in your mental spider web using active context, how do you ensure it stays there for years?
Right, because I forget things all the time.
This requires tapping into neurolearning and your subconscious habits. The sources talk a lot about the curve of forgetting.
The curve of forgetting. That sounds ominous.
It is. To combat it, you must use spaced repetition systems, or SRS.
So that means reviewing words at increasing intervals, right?
Yes, specifically reviewing them just as you are about to forget them. That signals to your brain that the information is important to keep.
And the sources also highlight the power of social anchoring.
Huge factor. Through group classes and role-playing, you force yourself to encounter diverse accents.
And it creates these memorable, emotional social interactions that make the language stick.
Exactly. And then there are the subconscious tools.
Like committing just 10 to 15 minutes a day to listening to audios.
Yes, and practicing shadowing. That's where you imitate native rhythm and intonation out loud.
Oh, I've heard of that. You just sort of talk along with the audio.
Right. It builds physical muscle memory. And the sources even mention using subliminal audios to plant neural seeds.
Now, that part really caught my eye. But before we get into the subliminals, the sources also mention holistic health elements required for a genius-level memory.
Yes, everything is connected. Reading voraciously, syncing your brain hemispheres.
Prioritizing sleep, too.
Hmm.
They say quality over quantity is vital for memory consolidation.
And using the Pomodoro technique for focus. Plus, they talk about how gut microbiota and nutrition directly fuel cognitive function.
It's wild how what you eat affects how you remember English phrases. They also address overcoming intellectual imposter syndrome using affirmations.
Which is so common in high-level business environments. You have to confidently believe you belong there.
So what does this all mean? I have to push back on the subliminal audio concept. Can I really just listen to an audio track while I sleep and wake up ready to pitch to a board of directors?
What's fascinating here is that subliminals and neurolearning aren't magic spells.
Good to know, because that sounded a little too good to be true.
Right, they don't magically teach you vocabulary while you sleep. What they do is prime the subconscious.
Ah, okay. So they reduce anxiety and build confidence.
Exactly. But they absolutely must be paired with active, voracious learning and those lifestyle choices like diet and sleep we talked about.
So they just sort of prepare the soil, but you still have to plant the seeds with active context and spaced repetition.
That's a perfect way to put it. True fluency only blooms when you combine all of it.
Wow. Okay, well, we've covered so much ground today. To summarize, mastering English for the business world isn't just about memorizing a list of vocabulary.
Not at all. It's so much deeper than that.
It's about understanding the structural nuances of hierarchy, using diplomacy, and building those phrases into your brain through active context.
And spaced repetition and holistic cognitive health.
Exactly. So we have a call to action for you, the listener. I want you to take just one formal phrase we discussed today.
Maybe something like, I'm afraid I disagree, or allow me to introduce myself.
Yeah, take one of those and apply the three-step visualization method to it right now. Make it personal, visualize the room, and feel the emotion.
It really works. And to wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Lay it on us.
Well, linguists know that the language we speak shapes the way we think.
Okay.
So if you deeply internalize the formal, diplomatic, and highly structured language of business English, does it eventually change your underlying personality?
Oh, wow.
Right. Does mastering this kind of language change how you handle conflict in your own native language?
That is a wild thought. You're rewiring your brain for English, but you might be rewiring how you interact with the world entirely. Well, you'll have to explore that on your own. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.